Yo guys, it's Vin, and this is my 2021 Kung Fu guide. So if you've been caught up with Brawlhalla news in the past few weeks or so, you would know that Kung Fu is actually being added to as a ranked 2v2 queue to Season 20 on April 21st, and that doesn't really matter. By the time you're watching this, Kung Fu would have already been added, but the time I'm recording this, it won't be, so I'm going to be here in a custom game with my friend Bobby, and we're going to give you the rundown of what I think are the best Kung Fu legends in Brawlhalla. So let's start with stances. A lot of times in Brawlhalla, people say that you want to be taking away decks, and there's a lot of different optimal stances in this game, but in my opinion, there's no reason to go anything other than speed on any legend. I know that some people like to go decks because they think it'll make your moves faster, especially on offense, when you want to be throwing out a lot of moves to get the ball in the net. However, in my opinion, none of that is as effective as running a 9-speed legend, or a high-speed legend for that matter, because it's just way easier to move around your opponent, especially when you need to rotate around. Now, there are really two roles that should be played in Kung Fu. Of course, there's a little bit of variation, but there's the offensive role and the defensive role. We're going to talk about defense first, which is, in my opinion, the best legend is Lucien. I don't really think there will be too much of an argument for this one, and I'll show you why. Now, there have been a few Kung Fu tournaments, and the grand finals featured two Luciens on both sides as goalies. And let me show you why. Bobby, can you send the thing into my... Lucien Katar Nsig covers grounded. It's a 360 sig, so it'll cover pretty much everything up here too. And send it into my net again, Bobby. It will actually perfectly send the ball into their net, because if it's on red, if the ball is on orange or red, if their opponent has a weak goalie, because it sends at a pretty good angle. Another thing that's really good about Lucien is, of course, his high speed, and this allows Lucien to abuse Katar and Nair. So let's say, can you send the ball into my net? Let's say for some reason, oh no, don't watch that. Send it into again. Let's say you miss your Nsig and your Nsig is on cooldown again, like let's just say I missed that. And I can do a katar Nair really quickly to get the ball out of the net. If you have an Nsig, it won't be able to cover down here, and this is kind of an awkward area to cover. Do it one more time. You can do a Dsig to perfectly spike the ball into the net. Okay, it didn't do it that time, but you can spike the ball into their net like that if it's on yellow, and which is really good because not a lot of legends actually have an ability to cover this area from here. And what's also really good is if the ball is on orange or red, if you do a Dsig, like, oh, not, my bad, not that. Can you do it one more time? And light? My bad. One more time. You do oh no. One more time. One more time. Do a Dsig like this. If it's on orange or red, if you hit it at the right angle, it won't actually send into their goal, but it'll send up here. And if you have a teammate with Scythe, which in my opinion you should always have Scythe. Sorry, that's a little spoiler. I didn't give you a warning for that one, but we're gonna be talking about that soon. A good team play is if the ball is rolling here, you can tell your teammate to go up here, wait for your Dsig to spike the ball upwards, and then get your teammate to send the ball in with active input on Scythe, like a dare or something. Also, just to talk about blaster sigs, in my opinion, you shouldn't use blaster sigs too much. You should really just throw away blasters so you can get katars. I mean, if you really need to, though, I mean, I guess blaster Dsig is good for covering a lot of area because of how many active frames it has. Going like this is really good. Just endlighting too is able to stop the ball. However, I don't really recommend it too much because your opponent can actually like team combo off of you and then push the ball into your net. So anyway, that covers Lucien as the best defensive legend, and now we're going to move on to what I think are the best offensive legends. Now, as I said before, there are really only two roles you want to be playing in Kung Fu, which is defense and offense, and of course there are different variations in the plays that you can do, such as when you're on offense, rotate back to defense if you think your teammate needs help, or defense rotating to offense if you think that you need that edge to get the extra goal. And although there is room for variation, you really shouldn't only be playing defense or only be playing offense. Like, for example, you see a lot of people spamming double Thatch with Blaster Dsig, spamming cannonballs. Although it's really funny and it gets a good laugh, if you want to be getting elo, I don't really think so that's the best way to do it. You're not going to be scoring. And on the same note, you shouldn't only be playing offense because if you have two scythe nutters just double teaming the ball, of course you're going to score really easily, but you're going to get scored on extremely easily no matter how high your speed stat is. And now that segues right into my main point, which is how to choose the best Scythe Legend, because of course you want to be playing Scythe because active input gives you complete control over the ball. Now, there are really only 4 main Scythe characters that I want to talk about, and all of them have extremely high speed, but there is one other one that I want to mention, and we'll talk about her later. The main ones that I want to talk about are Fate, Jiro, Mordex, and Artemis. Artemis has the highest speed stance out of all of them, but in my opinion, the best one is actually Fate and Jiro, and in the middle somewhere is Mordex. I think Fate and Jiro are actually the best, not because of their signatures, because in my opinion, signatures are not too good in Kung Fu, because no matter how fast they are, they're pretty slow, and unless they cover an angle that you can't already cover, they aren't super useful. I think mainly you should be using your light attacks because of how fast the ball can go when it's in red and like the later stages of the point. So in my opinion, Fate and Jiro are the best because of their secondary weapons. Their secondary weapons like Orb and Sword allow them to D-Light Sair it or Sidelight Sair on Orb right into the net. And of course, Scythe is like the main event of Kung Fu. You want to be using a lot of Scythe because of its active input potential. However, if your Scythe isn't really feeling too good that day, you can do a lot of things with Orb to send the ball directly in, like Sidelight Sairing on Orb is really good. It's pretty slow in earlier healths, but it's still really good. If you want to send the ball upwards, you can do things like D-Light and Nair to send the ball up to set up for something off the wall here or just to bring it over. You can also do things like Orb Nair to completely stuff out the ball if you're rotating back to defense. So Bobby, can you grab Spear and then send the ball in? Orb Nair will completely stuff that out. Of course, you should mainly be relying on your teammate Lucien to block it out, but let's say, yeah, you just need to rotate back because your teammate is struggling a little bit, Orb Nair will cover it perfectly. Another one that's really good is Orb Recovery. Yeah, send the ball from there. Let's say you're rotating in like that, Orb Recovery will actually completely cover the whole goal, which allows you to, if you're over here and the ball is going over, dash up like this, and then quick recovery, and that'll send the ball up to the top, onto the backboard. I know Orb Nair is really good. It's really good for just bouncing, like you just saw there, bouncing it in. You can also bounce it off the wall on top if you're carrying the ball upwards. You can kind of like spike the ball inwards. Orb Dare, and combined with Sair gives you a lot of control over the ball. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about Orb. But now let's get on to Scythe, which is, in my opinion, the main event of Kung Fu. Generally, you want to be using a lot of Enlights because Enlight is super quick. It's basically a wall. You can also GC it and to set up into anything because, of course, there are no such things as like true combos in Kung Fu. The ball can't dodge, so it doesn't really matter all the dodge rays that your moves have, so you can really do anything. Enlight Recovery is good, Enlight Sair is really good in my opinion. Enlight Nair, if you, like, just like I said on Orb, if you want to send the ball upwards, and you can do weird things by sending the ball back with active input. Of course, Dare is really good, although in my opinion, you really shouldn't be using Dare too much when it's on the ground. Like, if I have the ball like this, Dare doesn't really do too much, it just sends it here, which gives an enemy Lucien perfect opportunity to Dsig, like I said before. You want to be using a lot of Nairs down here, because, of course, Enlights, because it'll send directly in, Enlight Sair, Enlight Recovery, but if you have to use an active input move, Nair is much better. Dare is much better up on the top of the stage, because you have more room to move. With the Dare, the ball will send a little bit downward, so if you're at the start of the match, you can Dare it in, and active input in the net, or you can Nair it back into the net. A lot of times when you score in Kung Fu, you can get a cheap goal, oops, excuse me, why am I so bad at Kung Fu? You can get a cheap goal like that by Nairing the ball inward. Alright guys, now there's only 2 more legends I want to talk about when you're playing aggressively, and that is Mordex and Artemis. I've mentioned both of them before because both of them have extremely high speed stats, and although I think they are probably like contenders for like the best because of their speed stance, and also Sigs don't really matter, their secondary weapons are not the best in my opinion for Kung Fu, just because gauntlets, you can control the ball really well, but all the moves like down like Sair on gauntlets, they spike. All of the aerial moves spike downwards. So if you're hitting a move like Sair on gauntlets, you need to be hitting it higher up on the stage to be able to send into the goal if the ball is on orange or red, like the later stages of the point. Same thing with Lance. I mean, okay, not really the same thing, but it's still a problem of equal scale, where Lance is pretty good at scoring, especially with like Sairs and dares, like literally zero to deathing the ball into the net, if you know what I mean with Lance, like carrying it in. However, in later healths, I don't think it's as good because of how clunky Lance can be. If the ball is moving really fast, Lance doesn't really have any immediate anti-air from the ground or even in the air. Lance Nair is pretty slow, if you know what I mean. And it's not like Scythe Sair or even Spear Nair or anything like that that covers at a really easy to predict 360 angle that's really fast. I know Spear Nair isn't the quickest, but we'll talk about that in a second. Sidelight Sair on Lance is pretty good for scoring, but like I said before, Lance is pretty clunky, and it's really your only option for sending it into the goal if you're not using the Scythe, which of course Scythe is the main event of Kung Fu, so you should really be doing that most of the time anyway. But if you have to use a Lance, it's not the best thing ever, in my opinion. And the last legend I wanted to talk about is actually Mirage. So let's load into the game, and I'll show you why I think Mirage is also a really good pick, despite her not having super high speed. I know here I'm going strength stance, that's just because I have my stances set to like what I normally run. You should be going speed stance here, just to clarify. The reason why I think Mirage is extremely good is because she adheres completely to the idea of playing both roles, offense and defense. Mirage is extremely good because of Spear Nair. It's a completely 360 degree hitbox. If you can predict it, I know Spear Nair is pretty slow, but like if you can predict it, like there, I know I missed there, but if you can predict it, Spear Nair is also good for blocking out the ball. You can also use Spear Recovery in the same sense that I said to use Orb Recovery, which if the ball is coming here and you need to rotate back to defense because your goalie is not doing a super good job, you can Spear Recovery to block the ball and put it up towards the backboard. Now, I want to move on to Mirage's Sigs. Bobby, can you end light the ball here? Side Sig does the same thing as Lucien Dsig. It's really good and it's really quick. It also has like no recovery frame, so if you miss this, it doesn't really matter anyway. Spear Nsig is really good for covering literally the whole goal if the ball is coming from down here, and even if the ball is coming from up here, it'll still block it out if the ball is around here, not here that is. Can you... Actually, no, don't worry about it. I'll do an Nsig. If you can probably tell that if the ball is coming from up here, I move too far away from the goal, so I'm not really blocking it. That's where I think Lucien is more optimal, but can you send the ball in again? Like I said before, Nsig is really good for just sending the ball away from you. If you can't do a Spear Nair, you can do a Spear Dsig to block the ball from the ground, because of course you need to jump with the Spear Nair, and like if you don't have time to do a falling Nair, of course the ball is going to score on you. Just do a Dsig to block out from the ground. And of course, this won't work in higher damages just because the ball sends slightly higher up sometimes. This won't cover the top, and this is where I think Lucien, of course, is more optimal. Okay, this is actually me from the future. I forgot to mention the reason why Mirage is so good at playing both roles is because Spear D-Light Sair is really good for sending into the net. I only talked about why she's good on defense, but Spear Sidelight Sair is really good, especially out of Lucien and Nsig. You can catch things with Spear D-Light and going like that, especially at the start of the match. Spear Sairs are really good because they're super long and super oppressive. You can just do Sidelight Sair because, again, the ball can't dodge, so it doesn't matter what combo you're doing. But yeah, Spear D-Light Sair like that is really good, especially if you catch the enemy Lucien in it like I did there. You can actually just completely stuff them out and catch them with your combo too. And I wanted to quickly talk about Unarmed. In my opinion, Unarmed is actually really good just because of how fast it is. Unarmed's Nair is really good for sending into the goal just from here. You can also do things like Recovery and Dare. Recovery, you want to send the ball up, and when the ball is upwards, you can do Dares to send the ball like that. Like sending the ball over like that into a combo like that is really good. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide. Of course, this is not like an in-depth guide on how to play Kung Fu, but this is more just a general guide of things you want to know. Maybe I might make an in-depth guide in the future. I don't know. It just depends on how ranked 2v2 Kung Fu plays out and how much I play it, how much I enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy ranked Kung Fu. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, I'll see you in the queue. Bye.